How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bushradical. If there's one thing that's missing in my life, it's sharp knives. So if there's one thing in my life that would make things better, it would be a good double-sided strop. So let's make one today. As far as width goes, that looks about like what I want. I'm going to want some kind of a handle for this, so I'm just going to take the bandsaw and kind of rough in a handle. So now that I've got my, basically it looks like a paddle. Now that I got my paddle situated, I need to find a couple pieces of leather. Now my wife's got a whole bunch of leather I could just go take. Alright everybody, I brought in the Strop project. I've got my Strop board. I have a big old piece of leather. This is Brooks. She told me I could cut some of it up, so I'm not going to ask twice. I'm just going to do it. Now when it comes to this strop, I'm going to need something roughly about that long and probably twice as wide as a strop, because I want to put a piece on the back and the front, or vice versa. So I'll need something, I don't know, probably about yay wide. And about, yeah, that's about right, about that long. Man, this is nice leather. I wish I knew what to do with this stuff. I mean, it's not mine, but it's really nice. I think what I'll do with this leather is I'm just going to kind of eyeball right down the middle. We'll cut this right about in half. And then once it's actually glued onto the strop itself, I'll go through and trim up any edges that are kind of sticking too far out one side or the other. Here's two pieces. I'm going to take the strop paddle, glue it, put a piece of leather on here, put the other piece on top, and then clamp it with these little C-clamps. Why wait around and talk about it when I could just go ahead and do it and get it done. Probably shouldn't be doing this over the rug, but whatever. Now the glue I'm using here is just plain old Titebond, and it's pretty much good for everything that you'd need a glue for. I'm going to move this around just a bit, just enough so that I know it's gluing. It's nice and even. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more. There, let's try that. Maybe a little more on this end too. Last thing you want is any loose spots. Best to keep it good and glued. Maybe spreading it out would have been a good idea too. Now I'm just going to take this guy and run it along there. Make sure that's pressed in there as best it can be. Now I'm going to take this guy, put it on here as a backer. Make sure the sides are nice and even. Then we'll throw a couple clamps on that guy, this guy. Nice and tight. The second one on there, nice and tight. You can see there's plenty of glue squeezing out. Not only is that wood going to soak up that glue, but that leather is also going to soak up the glue. So it's good to see it squeezing its way out of there. The whole idea is to give this just a little bit of time to set up probably hour or so. And then I'll take this clamp off, put the other piece of leather on the other side, wait until that sets, trim off all of the excess along the edges, and then we'll take and load up this strop with a couple different grits of honing compound. There's the strop, ready to be trimmed up. I'm going to stick the other piece of leather on the back side and throw a clamp on that. Can't go wrong with a lot of glue. Here's my piece of leather. I'm going to take this piece and just use it to kind of squash that leather down there. Make sure that glue is good and worked in. Oh yeah, that's about right. That strop is sandwiched into the center. All the leather's all good and glued up. Glue's all squeezing out the sides. That looks good. What we'll do is we'll take this in, throw it next to the wood stove. Give it probably 30 minutes so that it can set up. And then once it's set up, I'll take the clamps off and then we'll trim the leather off of this strop. Put some compound on it. Get to stropping. I'll take this knife. Get that excess leather off of there. It's much more what I'm thinking. Nice and clean. I get this off of here. I can clean some of that glue up before it all sets. Just like that. Okay. Not too bad there. I'll square this side up too. Now I'll get the tips, very end. You can see all that glue. That should do it. There's the strop. Tomorrow morning I will take and clean this up just a little bit more and we'll put some compound on it and start a stropping. Alright, so there you can see that the strop is all trimmed up. The glue is set. I've already taken the liberty of rubbing some fine polishing compound on one side, and I've got a pretty good coat on that leather right now. On the other side, I'm going to use valve lapping compound. So between the two, a nice fine compound and a good aggressive compound, this double-sided strop should do everything I need it to. Now this valve lapping compound, it doesn't have a wax that keeps it in place. So, you know, it kind of falls off a little bit, kind of dries out. But once it's in the leather, it does a pretty good job of staying there for the most part. Alright, so I've got my strop loaded up with valve lapping compound on one side. I've got it loaded up with a white, kind of a medium metal buffing compound. It's whatever I can find at the hardware store. Now the knife I'm going to use this one. This is a LT Wright Genesis. If you watch this channel, you know I'm big into cheap gear. And this is a $200 knife. The reason I own it is LT Wright sent me one of these knives. I was using a knife in a video and a sub said, hey, if you like that knife, you'll love the LT Wright Genesis. I emailed LT Wright and he said, I'd love you to have one. Just get, use it and then post a review. If you do that, I'll just send you one. And that sounded like a good deal to me. I make it a point that all the reviews I do, I have to use the gear And it's a no BS review. If the gear sucks, I'll tell you it sucks. If it's really good, I'll tell you it's really good. I would never own a $200 knife because I would never pay $200 for a knife. But having had one given to me and having used it for probably 5 months now, I have to say it's a cut above every other knife I've got. If you have a lot of money and you just want something that's about as good as you can get, this is a good choice. And I'm a cheap gear guy. I'm not going to steer somebody towards a piece of excessively expensive equipment. I'm going to steer you towards utilitarian equipment. But when it comes to a knife like this, I've not been able to find a fault with it, and it really is a fantastic piece of gear. So if money's not an issue to you and you want a knife that's going to be your knife for the rest of your life, this is probably what I'd have to recommend to you. It's too expensive for my cheap blood, but having owned one, it's as good as it gets. Now let's take this knife and strop it out and see if it gets as sharp as we hope it would. I'm going to start on the side here that I've put the valve lapping compound on. Now why valve lapping compound? Well, the reason for valve lapping compound is I had to change a bent valve in my 95 F-150 2 years ago, so I had a tube of this stuff sitting around that I had to use to match the valve in with the valve seat. And come to find out, I made a strop that wasn't really a very good strop, just a belt and a couple staples, and I put this on there and it worked really good. But that strop is in Alaska, so I've taken this opportunity to make a good one. But this valve grinding compound, it did a really good job on that cheap junky strop that I made in Alaska. And I definitely want to have it on this good strop that we just put together here. Already that thing is just sick sharp. I'm going to take the other side where I've already pushed a bunch of that white buffing compound into the leather, and I'm going to strop this other side out. Now this is really, really tacky. That compound is very waxy and it sure just grabs the knife. Not like the valve lapping compound. This buffing compound is probably not the stuff for this application. It's probably best to go on a wheel, but I think it's doing the job. Oh, that knife is ridiculously sharp. That's awesome. Oh, I gotta say that the strop turned out as good as I hoped it would, and it sharpened my knife as good as I hoped it would sharpen my knife. And I've got maybe hours worth of time into it. I've got whatever Brooke paid for this amount of leather and maybe 25 cents in glue. And I think I'm set up. I think I've got all I need to keep my knives razor sharp. So thank you guys so much for watching Bushradical. If you haven't subscribed yet, just hit the subscribe and then hit the little bell next to it. That'll give you updates when I post videos, which I try to do quite often. My name's Dave Whipple, and thanks for watching Bushradical. And be radical, eh? See you soon.